Hello, everybody. So I thought I'd continue with this lawsuit. We had a bit of a laugh, if you remember last time, over this paragraph here. Kind of, someone said in the comments, it's almost like the chat log doesn't exist. But of course, to Lorne, when he wrote this, it didn't in the format that it exists. It didn't exist, if you get what I'm saying, because he created his own version of it in his head, didn't he? It's quite, I find it very interesting. I suppose what I find the most interesting is because as humans, we all live in a bit of each of our universes is different. Everybody lives in a different world, depending on your perspective and your vantage point and everything that you've been through. So everybody looks at things slightly differently. Even the person that you get on with the most in the world, even if you got like a twin brother or sister, their world is different to yours. But Lorne's is so drastically different that it's to the point of being insane, almost. He isn't insane. It's a mixture of normal self-deception and lack of responsibility, sort of lack of intelligence. There's many factors that make up somebody with the audacity to come out with that statement, with just that paragraph, really. So I think we left it there last time. So basically, this is, according to Lorne, this is a statement of fact. Statement of fact. There's no qualms about it. This is fact as far as he's saying. So here we are. One suspect was at the stink house. Before driving in, he drove past a couple of times because of reluctance to go there. One suspect was at the sting house before driving in. Driving into the sting house? I suppose he drove up the driveway, didn't he? He drove past a couple of times. He spelled that wrong. It should be past. He drove past, P-A-S-T. He drove past a couple of times. He passed it a couple of times. But anyway, we'll forgive him for a little grammar error, can't we? He drove past a couple of times because of reluctance to go there. There's his he never meant to do it, like. Sod off. So, I mean, what he's saying is he didn't want to go there, but he did. And he drove past a couple of times because he's like indecisive. On one drive past the decoy, there we are again. On one drive past the decoy was outside the house. On one drive past the decoy, that doesn't make any sense. On one drive past, the decoy was outside the house. Why does he have to put the decoy every time he mentions in, like, quote unquote? It's almost as if to highlight the fact that he's been conned, doesn't it? It's like, that's the decoy. That decoy shouldn't have been there, because if it wasn't for that decoy, I might not have got caught. It's this. This is what he can't wrap his head around, isn't it? The fact that he was kind of conned in a way. He doesn't see it that because he's been kind of conned, he doesn't see it that he's committed a crime. Or he didn't. Waving down the suspect. Suspect gave in and drove in. I love that. That's brilliant. Suspect gave in. So it's almost like, there we are again. If it wasn't for the fact that the decoy waved him in, he wouldn't have gone in. So, yet again, it's kind of them luring him there. One suspect was out of his truck. Decoy lured suspect into the house and got him. Isn't that fast? Isn't that interesting? It's not that he sat down of his own free will. It's almost like free will isn't a factor here. He was lured. The decoy lured the suspect and got him to sit in the recliner. Not that he thought I'd sit down. She did actually say, "Why don't you sit there?" But, you know, is he saying that in his mind, a 13-year-old girl was controlling his actions? Do you know, if he'd have written this along the lines of, "I was abducted by aliens when I was 13. They implanted devices into my brain to control my thoughts, and every now and again they make me act in a crazy way, and I cannot be held responsible for my behaviour. In fact, if you do an X-ray, you'll find certain deficiencies in my brain that are a result of alien experimentation." That would be easier to believe than the drivel that he's writing here, wouldn't it? You'd actually go, actually, that explains a lot. His actual crazy actions and all that nonsense he came out with. I think he might be telling the truth. You'd have an easier time believing that than this bullshit, wouldn't you? Isn't that amazing? I mean, we could do it. We could do a whole fucking stream on the possibilities of Lorne getting abducted by aliens and what they discovered. But anyway, right, okay. So got him to sit in a recliner. Not long after sitting, Chris Hansen appeared and began interviewing suspect. Interviewing, I don't like the way he said that, because we were just having a chat. It's like in Lorne's mind, it's like it's like it was like a formal police interview as far as he's concerned. Not long after sitting, Chris Hansen appeared. Oh right, sorry, I've already said that. Suspect had never seen Chris Hansen before and had never watched To Catch a Predator, and told Chris Hansen as much. Right. What the fuck? I don't understand the relevance of that. As you kind of guessed as I'm going through this, I'm trying to take it seriously. Because there's no point going through this if I'm just going to dismiss everything he says without even looking into it. I'm trying to, as crazy as it sounds, I'm trying to look at it as openly as possible and see if there's a hint of truth hidden within the words. But anyway, I'll continue in the way I'm doing it. And this is quite good fun for me, because I have gone over the lawsuits before, but I only briefly looked over them a few years ago. Maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Even when I downloaded these onto my computer about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years ago, I only briefly glanced at them because they were so big, and I didn't understand a lot of the documents. Like, this is the meaty part, you know what I mean? But anyway, suspect had never seen Chris Hansen before and had never watched To Catch a Predator, and had told Chris Hansen as much. Well, I don't think he'd... Well, okay. Right, okay, so what he's saying is, suspect had thought Chris Hansen was a policeman until informed otherwise by Hansen. Well, that's your problem, Lorne. That's not NBC's problem, fault, or they're not... He doesn't have to sit down and say, by the way, I'm not a police officer. He's asking you questions. Like I said in the last video, it's just one human being to another. But he can't wrap his mind around that. After getting up to leave, isn't it convenient how he completely misses out the importance of the conversation and what they actually spoke about? And how he admitted within that conversation that he went there to basically sleep with what he believed was a 13-year-old girl. You know, that really would kind of that would totally make any of his other spiel. It'd make all his other spiel that is going on here completely irrelevant, wouldn't it? If we're being honest, if he'd actually mentioned that point, but he can't, because, as we've already established, it's completely illusory, this. It's like he's done nothing wrong. After getting up to leave, suspect walked to the front door and opened it to leave, but was greeted by more than 5 officers with tasers and or guns and pointed at him and was instructed to lie face down on the ground, which was all caught by the cameras cluttering around. I think... Did I mention it in the last video? I think I did, so I'm not going to go into it too much about... I don't think it was necessary for him to have all them guns and tasers and whatnot pointing at him, and to be met with such aggression, because he wasn't posing a risk of harm to anybody. But that's another matter. So if there's one point I agree with, it's that. But that's against the police. That's not NBC's problem. And this is supposed to be Armstrong versus NBC. Once suspect's hands were cuffed behind his back, officers led suspect. He's a suspect though, isn't he? He's got to say he's a suspect. In other words, it's unproven. He's suspected of committing these crimes. He can't say offender or predator or fucking whatever else you want to call him. Once suspect's hands were cuffed behind his back, officers led suspect to the drive where Dateline cameraman instructed police what... Did they? I don't think they did. It's like I mentioned last time. I don't think that... Can you imagine, right, if you're a cop and you're there with your uniform on and all that, and some fucking snotty TV cameraman says, no, could you just do it that way and do it this way? You'd say, go and fuck yourself, wouldn't you? So the police were to stand while a suspect was waiting for the police vehicle to be brought from down the street. When police vehicle arrived, suspect was put in the back seat on the driver's side to be filmed by a Dateline camera. They then left the sting house and met another vehicle down the street where a camera woman from Dateline switched vehicles to the vehicle carrying the suspect. This is funny. She got in the front passenger side and turned around in the street and began filming suspect with a small handheld camera. Suspect put his head on the back of the front seat to avoid being filmed, but was ordered by officer to sit up straight. Oh man, this was for the purpose of filming. Oh my god. I mean, I suppose I do get what he's saying, right? He's in this traumatic situation. He's been humiliated. He's been interviewed by Chris Hansen. The cameras have walked down. He's in the cop car, and he's got a camera shoved in his face. It's like, you could argue, I mean, don't get me wrong, I paid money for that footage, as I've said, good money. But you could argue that really, isn't it time to sort of say, you know, he's been through enough, let's give him fucking 5 minutes to get his head together. So you could argue that it was excessive, but that is another argument. Once suspect arrived at the sheriff's department, there was more television cameras there that followed a suspect, because if you remember, there's the footage where he's kind of got his hands over his face and you can see his hand like moving. It's funny. Suspect was then put in the interview room where he was interviewed by the police. After the interview ended and suspect to sign the consent to search form, he was left alone inside the interview room for 10 to 15 minutes while police stepped outside the room to discuss strategy with the Dateline camera crew. How does he know that that's what they did if he was inside the room? That they were discussing the strategy. What strategy? What strategy are they discussing? To discuss strategy with Dateline camera crew. Well, he's already locked up. So are you saying that the Dateline camera crew are going to discuss the strategy of the interview with the police? It's, you know what I mean? It's like this conspiracy, isn't it? It's a conspiracy running right through it. And he's the victim of this mass conspiracy. Everybody's conspiring against him. That's what you call paranoia. When the police came back in, they handcuffed suspect once again with hands behind his back and led him outside in the parking... What? When the police came back in, they handcuffed suspect once again with hands behind his back and led him outside in the parking lot of the sheriff's department, with the Dateline camera crew tagging along to watch the search of his truck. Came back and they handcuffed suspect once again with hands behind his back and led him outside. Right, I'm getting a bit confused here because I thought that Lorne stayed in the room and they just searched his truck and there was a camera searching the truck. I don't quite get that. Once there, 2 police officers conducted the search of suspect's truck with Dateline camera crew. And one officer stood back about 20 feet or so with suspect and another, so he must have been there from Dateline to watch the search. Suspect was not expecting camera crew to be involved in the search of his truck and also was unable to see the search of his truck because the Dateline camera crew was filming suspect with a bright light from the camera in the suspect's face. Suspect placed himself behind the police officer to avoid being filmed, but police officer was instructed by the cameraman to place suspect to the side so the suspect could film. So the man could film suspect Okay, suspect then tried desperately to hide from the cameraman by turning his head from side to side, and even bent as far as he could forward. But the cameraman followed his every move, keeping the camera right in suspect's face and almost touching his face with the camera. Right, okay, the camera crew were a bit excessive. So he's all painting a picture of harassment, bullying, and obviously this lawsuit can just completely avoids the matter of what he was there for, what he was there at the house for, what he went for, and what he tried to do. There's not even a hint of that in here. There's no admittance of guilt whatsoever in anything that I've read so far. Not one shred. When police were finished with the suspect, the two suspects to the Warren County Jail, and camera crew followed them inside the jail hall until they were instructed to not go any further. 2 or 3 months later, the Catch a Predator segment aired from the Sting in Bowling Green. The suspect had not even had the chance at a fair trial. The suspect had not even had the chance at a fair trial. Well, you pled guilty. He pled guilty. I don't understand what he means by not had the chance at a fair trial. Yet the programme was allowed to be aired. And just by the name of the show alone, the suspect knew that he would not get a fair trial and knew that the public would always see him as a sexual predator, thus ruining his childhood dream of becoming a country music star and his reputation of being a loving, caring, hard-working, law-abiding citizen of the United States because of the worldwide viewing of the show. Oh my goodness gracious me. I mean, he pled guilty, right? Okay, he pled guilty. Why? Because they threatened him with the child pornography charge. That's something we can maybe talk about a different time. But if he's not guilty, you plead not guilty. And you take your chances unless there is unequivocal evidence and you know that you've been stitched up to such a degree that it's impossible for you to... And even then, some people would still go not guilty. Right, yeah, I think I mentioned it last time. I do, however, say that let's just say someone was caught in the show by accident, like the mate had stitched them up. It could happen. And they ended up getting... but I would say that if that was the case, let's just say someone went there, that NBC would have they would have been able to tell and perverted justice. They would have been able to know that he did get stitched up, and they wouldn't air it. You know what I mean? I mean, we can all have a laugh at the ruining his childhood's dream bollocks, but basically, it's just him painting this picture of the fact that these people ruined his whole life. That he was a great guy, that he was there to protect this girl, he never did anything wrong, never even meant to do it. They shoved cameras in his face, they pointed guns at him, they arrested him, they took away his dignity, they humiliated him continuously. They stitched him up with signing documents that he didn't know anything about. They didn't give him the right for a fair trial. He's painting this crazy picture that everybody was against him, that he's the subject of this terrible ordeal, that he's basically been bullied, that he's like history's greatest sort of victim of the modern world. He had a dream, a childhood dream of becoming a country music star, and his reputation, according to Lorne here, he has a reputation of being a loving, caring, hard-working, law-abiding citizen. I think there's a few people that disagree with that. I think we know better, don't we? These libel, slanderous and defamatory accusations have caused great mental and emotional problems that have led to depression and emotional distress disorder. To put suspect on whatever that is and Prozac. After 4 or 5 months, suspect believed he could handle not taking Prozac, but had to be put back on it approximately a year later while at the Kentucky State Reformatory and had to be moved into a special unit to help deal with the illnesses. Since he's been at Luther Luckett Correctional Complex, suspect had stopped taking Prozac again after about a year, and through the help of books has taught himself to meditate to help deal with his new illnesses of depression and EDD. Suspect states that he still has some tough times now and then, but for the most part the meditation is working. I would suggest that it isn't and didn't. Or you wouldn't be writing this drivel. And you wouldn't have been, I'm assuming most people know what's going on at the minute. I don't know the full ins and outs of it, because I'm not involved in it at all, nor have any wish to be. Some of it is amusing. We can say he now believes, or was recently, he now believes he's in a relationship with Casey Moreau, who played the decoy at the house, and he's talking. I don't know. He's been talking to her, and he genuinely. Well, I say genuinely believes it, but it's I think basically I thought I'd mention that because there is no end to the self-delusion that this man can put himself through. It really is fucking remarkable. But it's a combination of him not having much else going on and him wanting to have something tangible in his life. Of course, you'd feel deeply sorry for him if he didn't try and do what he did on the To Catch a Predator show, but obviously, according to Lon, he never meant to do it. Suspect also states that he's never had any emotional problems in his life to this extent. Well, of course you haven't, man. You've never been fucking humiliated on national TV before that has ever caused him to take Prozac. It's just... I was talking before about your own perspective. Lon doesn't have the ability to see anything from any other vantage point other than his own. Meditation is supposed to help you with that. I've had some quite profound moments meditating, would you believe? And one of the most profound things is you can intellectually agree with someone else that everybody sees things from his own perspective, but once you truly grasp that and you're truly able to sort of do that, and you can do it through deep meditation and contemplation, you don't make judgments like you used to about anything, about a person, a situation, anything, because you know that your own judgments are deeply based on your own personal bias. Lon has this complete inability to look at anything from any other perspective whatsoever. All this is written in a way, and he's put some thought into this. This is something that he's had to pay money for. He's had to type it out. He's had to get it sent to the court. It's not an easy task. But yet, there's one important element that is missing from all of this. Some of what he says is true. He has probably suffered mental illness, and he has a camera shoved in his face and guns pointed at him. But he doesn't understand. He's completely missing out the point that he was a sexual predator, that he was a danger to children. He couldn't get his head around it, and he still can't, because the truth is just too much for him to face. And I understand it, just like we were talking about. Obviously, you can't put yourself from his vantage point, because you wouldn't try and do what he did. But let's just try and think that you had this horrible, monstrous side of you. Can you imagine the pain of having to face up to it and seeing yourself for what you are? If he could understand that it isn't really who he is, it's kind of silly decisions he's made throughout his life that have created this other side that's took him over. If he could see that, he could heal, but he can't. He just can't. Well, he can, but he's not going to do. Suspect has done an extreme amount of mental and emotional suffering due to the disgusting, ruthless, I think I remember Crank Cinema doing a video once. Anyway, I think it was like 5 most cringeworthy statements from his lawsuit, and this sentence was like one of them. suspect has done an extreme amount of... A suspect has done an extreme amount... I don't think that sentence doesn't really make much sense. Anyway, extreme amount of disgusting, ruthless, uncaring, grotesque and degrading actions. Well, if it was an innocent person, right, then it would be disgusting, ruthless, uncaring, grotesque and degrading. You could completely agree. If it was an innocent person, you would probably do everything in your power to get Dateline or NBC to justice. You know. But there we are again. You just can't... You know, one could argue that the tactics may have been excessive with the cameras in the faces and the guns and all that. But even so, does it really... What he tried to... The whole point of the show is it is true what they say. NBC's motives are not 100% honourable. And neither are the police departments. But you can't really disagree with the tactics that they employed. The more these people get exposed on national TV, the less people are out there trying this, and the more children hopefully will have been saved from these people. No one with any degree of decency could ever disagree with if it saved one children from harm, it was all worth it. But that's something that he hasn't got the ability to look at, and he can't, because it means him admitting guilt. Suspect states that he will never have the life that he once had again. No, and whose fault is that? His own. And will constantly wonder when passing someone on the street or when meeting new if he will be recognised from the worldwide viewing of the show. He will also never be able to feel completely safe again because of the people that are ignorant enough to believe the accusations of the show and are numb to the truth of the actual reality of the making of the show. Ignorant enough to believe the accusations. I mean, to be fair, if you think about the show, they didn't really make that... They didn't make any accusations about him. You know, even Chris Hansen didn't. All they did was presented the evidence. They put his chat log up there. You know, I wish I could marry you right now. And then, do you want to look at my all that kind of stuff. That's all they did. Chris Hansen he gave Lorne a chance to explain himself. The whole Amanda James story unravelled and really didn't change anything. And he basically, Chris Hansen, he tied him up in knots. He said, well, okay, so because you got taken advantage of by a woman, you think it's okay to take advantage of this girl? He's like, oh, no, I didn't. And I'm numb to the truth of the actual reality of the making of the show. Of he show. Well, what is the... yeah. It's actually like annoying me, this. We've had some good laughs, haven't we, with the other couple... Oh, well, hopefully you have. You know, the other couple of videos I've done. You're just having a bit of a giggle at the shite he writes. But I'm actually getting, like, angry as I'm reading it. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm thinking, you dickhead, how dare you come out with this crap? Do you know what I mean? It's actually, like, frustrating, isn't it? Oh, Jesus. Right, well, I think we've done enough for now. So, I think we'll have to continue, won't we, with this. Plaintiff states... So, injury... I think what he's doing... He's going over each of the arguments that he made in the original part and expanding on them. So, excuse me, I'm sorry. Just had my tea and a drink of green tea. Anyway, you didn't need to know that, did you? The point is, we'll carry on with these, and I'll leave it there. So, I thank you again for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Just leave any comments. Hopefully, you'll feel as frustrated as what I am right now at the writings of this, the bizarre ramblings of this individual. And I'll speak to you soon.